Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, my friends, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. That's Blake. I'm Will, and today we got a very special episode because we will be discussing the finale of
No,
Campaign 3. It does
stop.
not feel real still, man.
And to end this episode, if we don't do this episode, the campaign never ends.
Well, in that case, see y'all later. Let's
Signing
keep this
off.
ball rolling. But man,
Oh man.
it's surreal because like this now technically for you longtime Pixelist lore peeps out there, you know that our channel didn't start with campaign 3 technically, but it really feels like it did. Like, you know, kind of this campaign and Critical Role is definitely what this channel mainly became focused on. So it's weird that we're now here at the end. It, like, you know, 3+ years have both flown by and not at the same time. I don't know.
It's a weird feeling. It didn't really hit me until today with EXU Divergence starting. It really hit me today of like, oh man, like this is the last. Like I know we're gonna get one shots and things like that. But I was like, dude, this has been such a habitual part of my life.
Yeah.
Like we haven't missed a week.
No.
You know what I'm saying? For 3 years.
Crazy.
So, you know, I don't know. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
It really hit me today, for sure.
Yeah. Extremely like bittersweet and just, which it always is, but compounded by the fact that this channel exists and we've been doing this for it as well. So, I mean, we'll probably talk about this more, but also just thank you guys that have been on this journey with us for the past 3 years. I haven't gone back and watched it yet, but I went back to see how long ago it was, and like I feel like we look like babies, even though it was only like 3 years ago, you know. But yeah,
Now
it's
we're
crazy.
now we're more winded from what the world.
Yeah, the world
has
is battered and beaten us down.
What's that Thor where he sees his mom? The world has not been kind to you.
Yeah.
It's like, I know. Anyway, well, we got a lot to talk about. We have EXU Divergence tonight. If you're watching just this video for the first time, you never checked out our channel, we do have a Discord where we have a live chat. You can check that out and join us for tonight's episode. I'm really excited for tonight. We have a Friday stream, which is just like a half-hour wrap-up stream. So that'll be tomorrow. And then we just had a new the Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One episode on Tuesday. Have you checked that out yet?
I have not yet.
Very good. Very good.
Excited.
But other than that, I mean, we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
It's a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, basically
including
like a 9-hour episode, essentially.
Yeah, including a very, very bulky recap. So we probably should just jump into it.
Yeah, let's just kick her off. So yeah, without further ado, let us launch into our recap of the finale of Campaign 3, episode 121, A New Age Begins. And as always, we will cut out this recap, host it separately for your catching up convenience, or, you know, catching up. I guess it's over now, but, you know, your refreshing convenience. But like we just said, this episode was a behemoth, 8.5, 9 hours. So we are inevitably going to miss some things here, and especially Blake, who has this Herculean, we talked about this word recently, Herculean second half. You know, so y'all bear with us if we miss any of the finer details here, but we're going to try to be quote unquote brief. You know, we'll see how it goes.
We're going to go back to our EXU days of 45-minute recaps.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So
hey man,
anyway.
the Byroden Carnival deserved it.
That was a great up.
But all right, yeah, without further ado, episode 121. So we pick up in this episode actually with the Mighty Nine, and we find them still on Ruidus, basically in the aftermath of what they've been dealing with, trying to figure out, are Bell's Hells okay? Because if you'll recall previously, Bell's Hells had reached out to Caleb being like, hey, can you teleport us out of here? So we pick up with Mighty Nine, and Caleb actually receives a message from Essek that says, hey, things are going down in Vasselheim. You guys need to get here ASAP. Then Caleb remembers his sending stone that he has to Orem. So he's like, oh, let me use this. And he does that to check in on Orem. And Orem is currently walking the streets of Vasselheim and says, like, yeah, you guys should probably get here. We then cut to Whitestone, where we have Keyleth basically getting woken up by a message from Allura, who tells her to gather everyone up and get to Vasselheim. And notably, Vax is not in this room with her, as we know that he had his kind of one night granted to him by the matron, but he is not here with Keyleth in this moment. So Keyleth kind of gets up and goes to gather the rest of Vox Machina, first checking in with Vex, who also hasn't seen Vax since last night, so they think he's gone. So Keyleth then basically gathers everybody else up, and they head toward Vasselheim. It's at this point that we cut back to Bell's Hells, who are still making their way through the streets of the city, and they are basically surrounded by armies and guards, and everyone is on edge. And they arrive at the Platinum Sanctuary, where basically all of the powers that be are. And High Bearer Vord addresses them and says, you were tasked with, saving the gods, but it seems as if you may have done otherwise. Explain yourselves, like what happened? And Bell's Hells explained that they stopped Ludinus, thwarted his plot, and that they have contained Predathos. And quickly, everyone realizes that Predathos is within Imogen now. And they say, like, we don't have much time. We can't really explain further than that. We need to speak with the gods. And High Bearer Vord is like, we speak for the gods, so you can talk to us, basically. But it's at this point that I believe it's one of the, priestesses of the Raven Queen kind of steps up and has like a black pebble orb thing that basically starts emanating smoke. And from that smoke, like a form of the matron appears, and she like stands with Bell's Hells, basically saying that, they have done this at my behest to protect all of our futures, and they are under my protection. And again states that there's not much time. And then the smoke that formed her basically also starts to like push out and kind of encapsulate Bell's Hells in like a sphere, if you will. And essentially what this is doing is like separating Bell's Hells from everyone else in Vasselheim. You could maybe think of it as like taking them to another realm or another plane in some way. And it's in this space that they are going to commune with the rest of the gods. And the matron then calls all of them here. So we see all of the rest of the gods basically kind of come in these like ethereal forms and are kind of like hovering above Bell's Hells, looking down on them. But again, the matron is still standing with them. So the matron then says, these 8 hold the keys to our survival. And inside Imogen here is Predathos. And Imogen says, I've contained him for now, but there's not much time. When I was with Predathos, I could see that he basically only hungers for gods. Like mortals do not concern him. So you guys are all free to do as you choose, but if you were to step down and become mortals again, then you'd be free of Predathos' wrath. And the matron says, I've been working with them, and I've been working with them in this aim, and even though a lot of you still view me as an outsider, I care for you. So, I think this is what we should do as well. And the rites of ascension have been rewritten, and I might butcher this pronunciation, but into the rites of kathotheosis, or basically the opposite of apotheosis.
Yeah, I think it's katatheosis.
Katatheosis. Basically saying that she's rewritten the rites so that they can all become mortal again. And basically says that, it would be different, but we would be bound to Exandria in a similar way to the Kryn's Luxon and how that works. And all of the souls in our domains currently would basically return to the Eidolon cycle, the natural cycle of things. And what follows next is basically a bunch of discussion and banter between the various gods themselves, the gods to Bell's Hells, basically like them discussing what are we going to do here. And we got a few different, moments where both Betrayers and Prime Deities speak up. We also get a little Vecna cameo. He is amongst this quorum here. And Asmodeus and Breas also have a little one-on-one where Asmo kind of congratulates Breas for everything he's done. But Breas is like, you know what? I found a family in Bell's Hells, and I know I promised to betray them, but I guess I lied. And Asmo is like, oh, don't worry, I'll find you. And basically, throughout this grander conversation, um, mechanically here, what Matt is doing is basically calling for each of Bell's Hells to have a moment where they kind of speak up, and depending on how they handle it will then cause for a check, be it a persuasion check, an intimidation check. They can flavor it however they want. And then cumulatively, this is going to determine what the gods decide to do, basically. And so everyone is having their moment, kind of giving their speech. And this culminates in a final roll from Imogen. And basically, what Matt reveals is that there is a DC of 30 here. And for every number below 30 that she rolls, one of the gods will not enter this ritual to become immortal. So, if she gets a 30, all of them will. If she gets a 25, 5 of them won't. So preparations are made. Fern gives Imogen advantage on this roll. I believe Laudna does something to help it a little bit as well. And Laura rolls and hits a nat 20 on this final pivotal roll for a total of 37. So all of the gods will be participating in becoming mortals. After that's decided, we basically have this kind of, smoke screen that the matron enshrouded them all in dissipate, and they kind of like wake up back to reality in Vasselheim, surrounded by everyone. And there's not even really a moment to like kind of explain or, talk about what just happened, because there's just immediately this like earth rattling sound of shattering glass. And they can see like the lattice of the divine gate start to unravel and break. And it's at this point that like mountains start to rumble, and like the matron actually claws out of the ground because gods can now walk on Exandria again. And this new now physical form matron kind of says, hey, there's one more thing we need. And she looks to the Bright Queen and says, like, we need your beacon. And the Bright Queen refuses. She's like, no, we're good. And the matron is like, we need this. It's the last thing to make this work. And the party is like, okay, where can we get one? Does Vox Machina have one? And as they're like all fumbling around trying to figure out what to do, Ashton steps up and says, I'll do it, and points to their head, which is functionally a beacon. And everyone's like, oh, no, 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 no. And Ashton's like, no, I want to do this. Let me do this. And the matron takes his hand, and basically all these like runic symbols start appearing, I think starting on the head, but then they start to cover Ashton's entire body. And the matron then like launches Ashton up into the sky at like an impossible speed, like headed towards the heavens, where everything basically all culminates uh, in a singular moment, and like then like a just a flash, and it's over. But one thing the matron says right before that is she removes her mask and says that like we'll meet again. Then this moment happens in the sky with Ashton, and everything clears. And Matt describes that everyone can feel like this seismic shift in the magic of the world. Um, and Orem is like desperately looking, being like, well, where'd Ashton go? Where'd Ashton go? And he, thanks to his high perception, is able to see his body like hurtling down toward the earth. So at this point, Bell's Hells is like, we got to do something about this. So everyone is like scrambling to like race towards where they think Ashton is going to be crashing into the ground. Dorian summons his horse to kind of bolt over there. Fern transforms into a shoebill, and Orem hops on, and they dart over there. Chetney prepares the Staff of Dark Odyssey with a banish spell, just in case. And Laudna tries to step through shadow in order to get closer as well. Laudna fails in her attempt to do that. And Orem, as he gets close enough with Fern, uses Seedling to kind of like grab onto Ashton a bit, which allows Chetney to then successfully banish Ashton to basically buy them a minute of time to figure out what to do here. And during that time, both Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine kind of converge on them as well. And Caleb basically readies telekinesis to like try and stabilize Ashton as soon as he reappears. That's what happens. Caleb successfully does that, is able to guide him basically to the ground safely, but they rush over and see that he's no longer alive. Ashton has this huge like void in his head now where all of that craziness used to be, and his eyes are lifeless. So they panic, are trying to decide what to do. Caleb says, I can destroy my transmuter stone to cast Raise Dead. Pike is like, I can try to resurrect him. She ends up getting some diamonds from Vex, and they try resurrection magic, but the magical runes, are being resisted by the space in Ashton's head. So Caleb then tries his transmuter stone and basically places it in the void in his head, and tries Raise Dead, but it's still not taking. So it's at this point that they're like, we need some like dunamancy. They're like, Bright Queen, can we please have a beacon? No. And so Essek runs over and he's like, he tries to add some dunamancy to the transmuter stone and what Caleb is doing. And together they are able to kind of patchwork something together that works. And when the spell goes off, it kind of blasts Essek away a bit, which causes his disguise to drop. Which we'll get to that in a second. But the spell works. So Ashton opens his eyes and is alive again. And Caduceus basically immediately heals him. But Essek, now being revealed in his true form, basically has the Bright Queen and all her guards like start to surround him. So Essek immediately teleports out before, I can't remember. I think somebody maybe tried to counterspell, but it didn't work. But he successfully, teleports away. And so the Bright Queen is like, okay, well, good to know that he's still around, but then says, nothing else to do here. So they basically leave without causing any more trouble. So the party then welcomes back Ashton, and they don't really have too much time to celebrate or anything because Imogen is about to burst. They need to deal with the Predathos situation. So Vox Machina and Mighty Nine are like, hey, we'll buy you guys some time from basically everyone else in Vasselheim that's around right now. Y'all go deal with that. So Bell's Hells kind of sneak away on their own up the heaven stairs of Vasselheim, like up to the top of the city where they can be alone. And Imogen prepares to unleash the God Eater. She takes Laudna's hand and basically communes with Predathos, telling him, there's no food for you here anymore, buddy. Like, all the gods are gone. And Predathos gets really angry and basically starts trying to like rip out of her. But Imogen tries her best to like guide this process through the path of least resistance, as Matt describes it. And she does have a roll. I can't remember what it is, but she rolls pretty well. And so basically, it's this tumultuous kind of hectic process, but Predathos does come out of her and basically starts to expand and search the cosmos for like any sign or presence of the gods. And not finding one here on Exandria, ultimately retreats to the stars, and leaves. And that's essentially where we go to break on the first half.
Good job, buddy. All right, so second half, 6 hours of content. I'm gonna do this as best I can, but I might skip a couple of details, so don't get too frustrated if I miss a key moment for you in the recap for our listeners, not for Will. Basically, from the break, which we knew this was on a separate day because of the fires in LA, the second break opens with Vax in the domain of the Matron of Ravens. And joined to the table is Morrigan from EXU, who I believe is a paladin for the Matron of Ravens. I think that's correct. Or a cleric.
I can't remember exactly, to be honest, but I think that sounds right.
Either way, the Matron basically charges the two of them with, hey, I'm leaving. The both of you will be my champion, and your job moving forward will be to basically watch over my domain. And as I'm born out into the world, to eventually find me and protect me, and so on, the cycle will go. Very Pervon Sewell-esque from EXU Downfall. Downfall, excuse me. So we have that flashback, or that moment happens. Then they leave the table, and Abria comes at the table, and she has a vision as Deanna with the Dawnfather. And it's a very similar conversation of the Dawnfather saying, hey, I'm leaving. I'm descending to become mortal. And it's a much more positive interaction than what we've seen previously between Deanna and the Dawnfather. But she ultimately asks, "Are you scared?" And he says no. He has no idea what's going to happen, but he's very excited. And he basically says, similarly to the matron, "You are someone else. Come find me, because we'll be here. We'll be on Exandria." Then we cut to out of this vision where Christian Navarro joins the table, and it's Deanna and Frida. They're in Vasselheim. Frida explains that they know that F.C.G has died, that they felt it happen, and separately, they're looking for where Bell's house is. They do eventually find them. The entire table is now present. And there's just kind of like exchanging of like what's happened and like the latest information. Frida does ultimately ask for a piece of F.C.G. And there's a funny joke about bringing out F.C.G's face and being like, "Oh, maybe a different piece to remember him by." But there's an interesting detail of Frida telling Chetney, "Hey, we found you because I could smell you." And Chetney's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And remembering that Chetney had bit Frida back in Malezimir during Team Wildmount adventure. And Frida is apparently now cursed with, as Chetney would say, the gift of lycanthropy, and is the world's first were-robot. Frida asks Chetney, "Hey, would you train me? Would you teach me?" And Chetney is glad to do so. They talk about the status of the gods. Ultimately, Ferns summons Tevin Clasp, the champion of Asmodeus, and Tevin basically says, "Hey, we've been commanded to watch over the temples, to keep the Lord's principles, and essentially wait for his return." And also gives a detail to Fern that Fern is actually bound to him and Asmodeus and the Nine Hells, to her surprise. Around this time, all the guards and important people show up, Vord, Groon, other religious figures, and they're kind of like, "Okay, what the heck's going on?" The party explained that the gods have descended, that Predathos is gone, and that this is what the gods wanted. And Groon basically says, "This is going to be a hard time for us, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure out what Vasselheim, what its new meaning, what its new purpose will need to be." And they basically say, "Hey, we're going to have a big meeting with all the important people. Come meet us there." Before they do that, though, they reach out to Opal because they're curious, like, what's the state of Opal? And it turns out that Opal is in Vasselheim. Amy actually joins the table, and she reveals that she is free of the Spider Queen's influence, though she still wears the crown, and they find out later she's unable to take the crown off. The party then go to this council meeting, and also the Mighty Nine's present, Vox Machina is present, as well as Planesrider Ren, and all of them basically vouch for the Iridians, even people that were formerly of the Imperium. They say, well, for all we know, they were controlled by the Weave Mind. And what should we do with this planet of the civilization above Exandria? And as I mentioned, they vouch for the Iridians, and they basically say, like, we should give them a home. We should allow them to come here if they want to. And Keyleth, the Derolos, basically all the leaders, like, put their hands up and they say, like, yeah, they can come to my kingdom. Like, we'll watch over them. And it's very much this welcoming, like, we'll all together help people come here. As the days go on, we have like sort of this like short term immediately after this meeting, like what happens with each party member. And Orem does find Planesrider Ren, asks her to pray with them, which she's like, I'm not really religious, but they pray. During this time, he attunes Ren to Seedling, which has a property to grow back appendages, and Ren actually grows back her arm. A nice little sort of last doing right by Ren after the party many episodes earlier were the ones who broke her arm off. So separately, Laudna and Imogen go visit Lievtel and ask, and Laudna basically says, like, hey, what's to become of me? Like, I'm basically cursed to undeath, so to speak. Like, we just want our fate together. Like, what do we do? And Lievtel basically gives like the classic, like, you sure you want to do this? And they're like, yes. Presumably this is a level 20 divine intervention, but through some course of a spell, you see golden threads between Laudna and Imogen that are then tied together, and Laudna presumably becomes mortal. And they will now be able to live out their lives together. The two of them joke to their friends that they just got married, essentially. Dorian, meanwhile, has a really sweet reunion with his mom. which was just a great scene. And she sort of frees him and reaffirms his freedom from like the commitment of being the prince. Breas is meanwhile visited by Asmodeus as sort of like a flashback scene of Asmodeus being like, hey, I know you said all that stuff about being with your friends, but we're gonna tear some stuff up, right? And Breas is like, no, I'm still pretty cool with my friends. Like, I want to stick with them. And Asmodeus is basically like, okay, well, I am going to show up one day and I am going to find you and like watch your back. And then we get this great scene with Breas to his friends. Actually, Ashley Johnson's like, well, Breas, it was great to meet you, man. Like, best of luck. And Breas is like, well, hang on. Like, we're best friends, right? Like, we watch each other's back. Just a great scene between the party. And then ultimately, sort of the last big moment together in this time period is the party decides to go back to Dressar, back at their roots. They go back to, I can't remember the name of the tavern, but Pretty, who was the ogre chef, they see Pretty again, and Pretty mentions that they have found someone. They visit Shadana. They even chat about maybe potentially reviving F.C.G. Chetney and Frida and Ashton talk about maybe going to meet Devexian and maybe venturing to Aor. Laudna animates furniture in the street as an homage to the very first combat of this campaign. Ashton revisits Milo, and they have just like a really great, reconnect, while also Ashton goes to FCG's old room and remembers some of their, gathers some of their belongings and kind of just remembers FCG. And then meanwhile, Orem and Dorian kind of steal away for a minute and just agree to enjoy life together and just to take it day by day. A couple other conversations happen. Fern and Ashton kind of steal away and kind of talk about like, what is this exactly? Fern says, I want to get to know my parents better. I want to study from Nana Mori, who's the fate stitcher, and do a little bit of my own fate stitching. She gives a very cryptic line where she says, Nana Mori has a collection and I have a collection. So it seems like, although Nana Mori's collection's much darker than Fern's, and also mentions that she wants to check in with the Unseelie Court and eventually collect Chetney's 5 eggs and heck, maybe even get a spot on the Taldore Council. And then she's like, Ashton, what do you want to do? And Ashton's kind of like, well, I want to, I guess, travel and like rediscover myself. To which Fern's like, can I come with you? And Ashton's like, let's have some time apart. And if you still want that, then we can cross that bridge when we get there. From there, we cut to Zephyra, where Orem has taken Dorian, Fern, Opal, basically the OG Crown Keepers, to Zephyra, and they run into Dariax, who is still there from when Dorian left him there. And Denise is there too. And we get this great moment of Amy Carrero like acting both characters out. Ultimately, Orem goes to Keyleth and just says, hey, thanks for believing me. Thanks for keeping me going. And basically says, can I be an emissary for the Ashari as I travel the world? And while they're in Zephyr, they do see Ray Lauren and Boromodo, who are like, presumably like, acclimating to Exandria. From this moment, we sort of get a very bittersweet epilogues of all the characters. And Matt asks, what happens over the next several years? We find out that Chetney eventually does hand off and introduce Frida to the Gorgine, decides to be a hand for hire, and as the years go on, he makes his way back to Uthadurn and finds that Ultgar's shop is thriving with proper craftsmanship, and there actually is the Pakapi Path, this apprenticeship program that's a complement to the impact that Chetney left on Exandria. I'm getting like emotional, man, like reading these epilogues as I'm thinking about this. Fern does go to Ligament Manor to study under Nana Mori and gets this scene where Nana Mori shows, basically says, hey, with the matron gone, we can pluck fate to our heart's content. And even gives her a moment to like pluck this golden thread where she sees, I think it was a man like in an alleyway. And Mori is like, we watch, we learn, and then when there's an opportunity, we bargain. Because she is a hag, after all. Ira visits with a bouquet of flowers and is invited to stay with Nana Mori. And Ira also mentions that the Unseelie Court is looking for Fern because she did, in fact, kill one of the princes of the Unseelie Court, her father. Long term, she wants to go on an adventure to find Chetney's eggs. She's given 4 sleight of hand checks, and from those rolls, Matt tells her that she does successfully, over the years, steal 3 of the 5 eggs. Those, though 2 evade her, and maybe that would be a great one-shot down the road. And then separately, she also decides she wants to study the crown of Opal to figure out how to get the crown off her head. We cut to Ashton's final epilogue, and he talks about spending time with Essek, trying to learn more about himself, knowing that the Bright Queen wants to see him. He has carved his hammer down into a sphere that he keeps, and he's a hired hand for archaeological digs and old temples and old artifacts, and sort of travels the world. Occasionally he visits Fern and even asks Ira for help to go to Zorhast and to visit the Bright Queen as just sort of like, hey, you're going to be my escape plan if things go sour. And then eventually decides to go to Ruidus and back and forth. And Ashton gives this very poignant comment of, he says, over the years, I think one day he goes to Ruidus and he never comes back and no one really knows why or what happened to him. Breus, moving to his epilogue, throws himself into his art. He has a phase of doing very tasteful nudes, particularly of Nana Mori, and then he has a phase of drawing evil babies, presumably knowing that Asmodeus is hot on his tail. In fact, he's so worried about Asmodeus that he eventually finds his way into Jester's home, and his faith in Artagan deepens as Jester mentions that, hey, Artagan's got you covered. And even one night as he's painting, Artagan visits him and even gives him some advice on how to improve his artwork. And it's a penis, but we also cut to Aurum and Dorian's epilogue together. Aurum is traveling across the world, being this emissary. He does eventually visit Nana Mori, asking about his pact, because he had this pact to one day serve her. And Nana Mori is like, that pact was never going to go anywhere. There's no way I could have helped you guys in Ruidus. Like, you're good. It basically like releases him from that. Dorian, meanwhile, describes how he has this zest for life and adventure. And as much as he loves Aurum, he also loves his friends. And he sees himself spending time with Aurum, but also going on just endless adventures and constantly looping his friends in. We cut to the epilogue of Imogen and Laudna. And in the short term, they help Ridians acclimate to Exandria. Laudna resolves to find F.C.G's coin, that not the Changebringer coin, the coin from the early days of Dressar that Aurum threw down the tunnel where they were trying to figure out what was going on with these, shade crawlers or whatever. But eventually they do build their cottage in the woods with Chetney's help. Imogen stays in touch with Liliana, who's walking her own path. And at night, she visits her friends in their dreams. It's also, by the way, that Travis gifts Imogen, or Chetney gifts Jester a physical wood-carved jellyfish, which was so cool.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a final gift of the campaign. And that's where we see sort of the last of Belle's Hells as Imogen and Laudna presumably live out their days in this cottage. Matt asks, what becomes of the Mighty Nine in Vox Machina? And Jester and Ford open a franchise on the moon, and they also have this back and forth on who's going to be in their wedding party, which we know there's a one-shot coming with their wedding. Caleb and Essek, meanwhile, they know that Essek is still a person of interest for the Kreen dynasty, and Caleb's sort of always planning their exit plan to escape if they're ever captured. Caleb's an advisor all over the world, and also meets with Bo to prepare for if Ludinus ever shows up again. And we get this awesome moment from Matt where he describes how Caleb would always try the scry spell. It never worked, but on this one particular day, he scries on Ludinus, and he sees Ludinus in a small cottage making tea for himself, and a mist surrounds the cottage, and they realize that this is the Shattered Teeth. A very, dawn on a new day, Thano-esque.
Yeah, it's exactly what I thought of too.
So good, so good. And then with this, Bo and Yasha plan to adopt, and so Bo says to Caleb, like, maybe we just put the brakes on Ludinus. Like, it seems like he's, done. To wrap up Vox Machina, we know that Grog goes to Ruidus and eventually meets Gaz Tomo of I think it was the New Republic of Kravirus. Yeah, this eternal bro shake. Scanlan and Serkonos, meanwhile, Scanlan gives Serkonos this lasting advice after Serkonos has tried to learn so much for Scanlan and just says, don't be Scanlan, just be yourself and go to Lieftel, which he does, and they pair up as the doors shut. Meanwhile, Percy and Vexalia, Whitestone's become even more successful. Residuum has become even more valuable. They've swapped technology with the Iridians, and Percy wants to train his children, notably Gwendolyn, to be able to find the gods so that he can keep an eye on them and make sure that they're not a problem. And it's here where Keyleth basically says, hey, I think that's a problem for the younger generation. Let's just let Gwendolyn decide if she wants to do that, and let's just kind of let that era be. Separately, she one day does connect with the primordial trees and hears the cry of a newborn baby and knows that this is a god reborn, but she opts not to tell Percy, and keeps it to herself. Pike, meanwhile, has a sense of loss in her purpose and direction. She doesn't know what to do. She resolves to clean and upkeep the temples, and Scanlan will visit her and just says, like, hey, I've been on all these adventures, but life just isn't as good as it is with you. Like, will you come with me? And Pike says, as much as I want to say no, I'm going to give you 6 months, and let's just give this a shot. And by the way, I've always had a thing for centaurs. And then Scanlan says, do you want to be a centaur? And she's like, sure. And so then Pike canonically becomes a centaur as a 9th level true polymorph is cast on her. And Matt says that the years go on, and after about 15 years, an acolyte knocks on her door and says, we think we've found her, and pulls her into an adventure, presumably the Everlight Reborn. And then we get the end. Matt gives this amazing outro of the end of the era of Reclamation. But first, one last incredibly beautiful scene of a day where Keyleth hears a knock on her door. She opens the door, and it is Vax, and they agree to start over. There is an incredible set of lines from Marisha and Liam, and especially a very beautiful one where she says, my name is Keyleth, and you're the love of my life. And the scene and the campaign essentially ends with them, with him coming into her cottage and them sharing a glass of wine together. Whew. Okay, so
Oof.
that is the end of episode 121 of Campaign 3 and the end of Campaign 3 itself. Thank you all for being on this journey with us. And if you're watching just the recap, click the link for our full thoughts on the episode.
Well done, dude. Well done. That was, 6
Bro,
hours.
I didn't
Tightly
expect. I was getting so choked up as I was going through the epilogues, and I was
Yeah.
thinking, like, am I really gonna cry on a random YouTube channel? Like, I gotta pull this together.
Listen, we're not random, all right?
Well, as I started going through the epilogues, I was like, man, it hit me when I watched it.
Yeah.
But as I was going through it again, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm really saying bye to these characters. Like this is hard.
Yeah, man, it's emotional for sure. So you know this, but
1 second, sorry.
yeah.
1 second.
Um,
All right, sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good. I was gonna say you know this, but well, you mostly know this, but to fill in everybody else. So the night that it aired, I think I made it through about 6 hours. And then at that point, I started to drift off, and I didn't want to I wanted to do it justice, so I went to sleep with 2 hours left, and then ever since I haven't wanted to finish it because I didn't want it to end. So I actually didn't finish it till this morning. I watched it. Yeah, I was getting emotional, man. It was bittersweet, So
Yeah. I watched it over. I mean, you remember that when we were watching it that night. And I think there was a moment in the chat where I was like, I'm staying up all night for this. And then definitely around 1 a.m, I was like, I am so tired.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of snacks. I ordered a pizza. I had eaten all of it in the first hour, but it was fun in hindsight. You get those moments are rare.
Yeah.
When you get to celebrate something together. And shout out to everyone in our Discord.
Yes.
It's been so fun having a community of people to just enjoy Critical Role with and talk about Critical Role. And just also get some really good chatter, some good dialogue. There was even a comment today comparing This was from Bright Dragon Desmond, comparing Legend of Vox Machina Scanlan with actual C1 Scanlan, and just like good chatter, good discussion, things that are just kind of interesting to think about. But it's been fun over these last 3 years to have people to enjoy this nerdy hobby with.
Absolutely. It's been the highlight for sure. Like the highlight has been the community with you guys. And also with you, bro. Like
Yeah, man.
here at the end of this, it's just, it's so cool to have done this whole thing with you. And
Yeah,
to also have, one of my best friend actually in Critical Role. Cause
yeah,
previously y'all, it's just, I've been on an island, I've
yeah.
been like,
That's
you guys
true.
should watch Critical Role.
We said
So
we were gonna watch C2, and I think I fell off around like episode 8 or 9.
yeah,
But yeah, it is funny how this all came about of just like, hey, do you want to do this YouTube channel? And I was like, okay. And then that we just like there was like never anything more than that. Just like,
yeah.
okay, let's record this week's episode, or like, when do you want to do it? So
Yeah,
it's kind
and
of
then
funny that
and we touched on this earlier, but it didn't even have anything to do with Critical Role when we started. And then we talked about
Mm.
Loki, and then
Yeah, that's
Loki
right.
ended, and not, like Critical Role campaign 2 was about to start. I was like, dude, what if we talked about that?
Mm.
And he said, or not campaign 2, campaign 3. Um,
Right.
and then we had him, boys and girls.
Yeah.
We got our hooks in them.
You did. You did. And it's funny, it's like now my life, because Joy had like a get together with a friend last Thursday, and I said, oh, because sometimes like I'll put the kids down or she'll put the kids down.
Yeah,
Which, by the way, this is so like random segue. Anytime I talk about putting my kids down like publicly, there is always someone who makes a weird joke of like, that's illegal, and I'm like, oh, okay, I gotcha.
I'm pretty sure
Just
I've done
anyway,
that before to you.
there's always someone who does it. Same thing with like when I introduce my name, someone's like Balake, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Anyway, but so she was like, yeah, I got this thing with some friends, and I was like, oh, that's C3 finale night. So,
Sorry.
and then she even like there was that instance, and then there was another instance where she wanted to get together with some friends, like all of us. And I was like, oh, I can't. It's C3. And she was like, well, that's not till like 9, right? And I was like, I'm not. Like, I'm not waiting till it starts. Like, I'm gonna that's my night. So,
Yeah.
but point being, it's become like part of my life. And even like we were trying to figure out our next D&D session, and everyone could do Thursday, and I was like, I can't do Thursday, guys. But it's cool, man. It's been a fun. It's crazy. We've dedicated like 4+ hours every week, plus doing this.
Yeah.
So like 5 to 6 hours every week.
Yeah. Crazy.
But
And I've mentioned this before, but even though I've seen the first 2 campaigns, I've never in my life have I been like, I'd always go through times where I'd get like 3 or 4 episodes of a backlog, and then
yeah,
I'd like binge it to catch up. So like, I haven't ever kept up week to week like this.
yeah,
So yeah,
it's crazy to think about. Man, I think you said it well. Like it feels like it went by so fast.
yeah,
Because I think back to like those early episodes in Dressar, and like us talking about the Shade Creepers and like what's going on, what's gonna
yeah,
happen. Like when they finally leave Dressar, what's gonna? You remember like we meet. I'm sure we're never into this, but I'm thinking about even just random theories we had, because we had like a kick where we thought Dressar was gonna be like lifted into the world
yeah,
or being
yeah.
destroyed
Because
or
of the
something.
broomstone that was missing. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, what if they're gonna like lift up the city?
yeah. What was that broomstone for?
I don't. I think we found out, but I don't remember exactly now.
Yeah, okay. It might have been just all the stuff that was being like shipped by the Paragon's Call or
Yeah,
something.
I know the
But
Shade Mother had some. Not that that wasn't
that's
like
true.
the reason, but like,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, and she could fly. That's
yeah,
true. Man, I feel like there's this conversation to be had about like overall campaign 3, and then there's
yeah,
like a specific conversation to be had about the finale, and I don't know which direction to go with it. And
yeah,
also knowing that the finale was like 9 hours, I also don't know.
yeah.
I don't know how to like do justice to
Yeah, I
every
don't
moment
either, to
in
be
this.
honest. I think we just gotta let's just let it flow what we want to talk about. And then maybe I'm not saying we have to do this, but maybe at some point, like a little bit down the road, we kind of have like another now
Yeah,
that it's been here are our thoughts on everything or type of thing.
it might be a good pairing with the campaign wrap up
Yeah,
in
yeah.
March. Like once we get some more questions answered, and I need to also see what was asked in the Beacon Discord of
Mm.
Matt's Q&A that he did
Yeah, I
last
haven't
night.
watched that yet. The Fireside.
Yeah, I'm curious like what the Q&A involved, and because we also got the tailgate party, we got some really good Q&A
Yeah.
as well. And this is, we don't have to get into this either, but for people who had been asking and wondering on, are we leaving Exandria? You know, what's going to happen? It seems like Matt is pretty committed to Exandria. And it also seems like the cast is pretty committed to a campaign 4. Referencing theories on, would campaign 4 be like an entirely different group of people? Like, would they have, are they going
Yeah.
to be retiring? I mean, it seems like they're going to be doing it again. But
Yeah, I would
who
say
knows?
that Camping 4 is happening based on those types of comments. And I think even Liam said that they had decided, like, because Liam always picks Sam's race and class. And he
Yeah,
mentioned in the tailgate that they had done that for
right.
the next one. So absolutely it's happening, but I wouldn't say, I'm not convinced it's happening in Exandria yet.
You don't think so?
Like, I know Matt said that like Exandria is not going anywhere, but I think that
Yeah,
could easily be true. Like,
yeah,
because they have a whole business around it, you know, like they
right.
could keep releasing source books. Like Exandria will be a forever project, but I don't think that necessarily confirms it being the
That's
location of
possible.
C4.
Yeah, that's
It
true.
easily could be. I don't, I'm not leaning either way yet, but I just wouldn't say it's hard confirmed that it will be. But yeah, well, one, I know we kind of already mentioned it, but I just want to again reiterate how great it was to watch the finale with you guys in every episode. But I know we had a lot of people, including a handful of first timers, come through for the Discord for the finale. So it was so much fun. Again, the highlight of this entire experience is enjoying it all with you guys. So we'll be here for tonight for Divergence, but also campaign 4. Hopefully we can continue the good times.
Yeah, as
And
long as you nerds like to continue to enjoy our hobbies with us, we'll be here. We had the channel when there was someone who commented on one of our videos recently and said, they basically said, hey, I've been here since the OG EXU days.
mm,
But all that to say, I mean, we were doing this stuff when no one was watching it. So, I mean, we'll be here into the future, I guess.
yeah.
So until Will and I's friendship is, irreparably fractured. So anyway.
But yeah,
Well,
okay, so I don't really know
so
where to
there,
start or what to look at or what.
it's such a hard, it's hard to have an idea of where to go with this, because as I look at my notes, there's part of me that just really evaluates the wrong word, but just like I look at what happened and I just think of, as a fellow enjoyer of D&D, how sweet it was to see certain moments happen. Dude, Marisha Ray, I
Yeah.
know you I know you give me a hard time for this. Marisha Ray, my favorite person of this entire campaign. My favorite. Loved the interaction with her and Vax at the
Yeah.
very end. She is such an incredible actress and had, in my mind, the biggest moments of this campaign. I'm thinking from even the subtle, I think it's Oram who asked, like, how could you be so happy after everything that's happened to you? And she gives this
Yeah.
brilliant line of, well, the worst thing that is imaginable has already happened, so why
Yeah.
wouldn't I be positive? But from that to trying to steal Oram's sword to the breakup with Imogen, incredible scene. Consuming the Gnarl Rock, and then this
Mm,
final moment with Vax. When I think about the most emotionally compelling moments of this campaign, I just got to shout out Marisha Ray.
yeah.
She was just incredible and brilliant, and everyone was great. But specifically, you didn't ask, but I loved Marisha Ray in this
No, I
campaign.
agree. She knocked it out of the park the entire campaign. But yeah, in this finale as well. And that final moment was so perfect,
Mm,
especially for the culmination of this grander 10-year thing. Because uh, I know you haven't seen campaign 1, but you know kind of what happens there
Right. Yeah.
because of what's happened in campaign 3. But yeah, just that kind of tragic ending to their story, and just her, and this is like a story beat she hit on in campaign 3 as we were spending time with Keyleth, of just like kind of her anger and like the pain of like what she's had to go through, and then finally getting like something there at the end, like finally getting some, I wouldn't call it like a happily ever after necessarily, which I also really appreciated. I
Mm.
liked that, like the realness of that reunion, and her saying that
Yeah.
like it's been hard and like we're gonna have to start over,
Yeah.
um, as opposed to just like, you know, I'm back, and it's just like
Yeah.
yay, like it felt more real and lived in the way that they handled it, and I loved
Yeah.
that.
It was like this is our reunion in context of all of our circumstances.
Yeah.
I was extremely satisfied with how that scene was handled. And pretty much anytime Keyleth was in a scene, I was like, "Can we give this girl a break? Like, can we please do
Yeah.
something, please?" From the brink of death, from the attack of Otahan,
Yeah.
and well, at the Bloody Bridge site and all that stuff. But yeah, I was glad they got the reunion. I want to ask you, because I had seen a couple of comments. I think one was on our Discord actually, of someone who was which all opinions are welcome here, guys. I definitely don't want the Discord ever to be like, we stand everything that's happening,
Yeah.
and there's no room for criticism. But I think someone mentioned in the Discord they were disappointed because it undid C1's ending, which I didn't see C1. I feel like we talked about this at some point too, and I don't remember if we did. Did you feel that way at all, having seen C1? Did this feel like a good wrap up for that pair, or did it feel in like opposition with C1?
um I liked it, and let me clarify that more, because you and I did have a conversation about this during the Vax rescue one shot, where I said, like, not that I don't want them to be happy or anything, but I was like, man, if they just save him and he's just back now, I felt like maybe that does kind of like, I don't know if cheapen's the right word,
Yeah.
but kind of like cheapen what happened in his story at the end of C1 and all that stuff. So I even was hesitant about how that would be handled. But the way it was handled here, I really like, because it all tracks
Mhm.
and makes sense. Like it wasn't like a let's tie this up nicely for a happy ending. Like that wasn't why
Yeah.
it happened. It was like tuned into the narrative. Like
Hmm.
because the matron descended,
Yeah.
now Vax kind of can have not only
Yeah.
more time because she's not going to exist in the same way for
Yeah.
decades, but also like she's going to live as a human. She wants that for him, and he still is bound by his duty and will have to be her
Hmm.
champion once she returns. But like now he can kind of have somewhat of a life as well. So to me, it was kind of like a win-win in terms of not, again, this is too strong a word, but not betraying anything from campaign 1, but also giving Keyleth and Vax some happiness. So I thought it was handled beautifully.
And for clarity on the matron, to make sure I understand this correctly, the gods agreed to descend to become mortal, but they still are deified, I guess, in a way. Um,
I was wondering about this too.
yeah, presumably, like from what I understand, is it's going to be like an endless cycle. Like they were consecuted essentially by the beacon to Exandria, and whenever they die, they will be reborn again as a human or mortal, I guess, for eternity. Is how it's been drawn up. Is that the right? Is that how you interpreted it?
I guess so. I didn't really like I didn't really have a framework, but that makes sense to me what you said, especially with the Luxon ties and the fact that they needed a beacon to do it.
Mhm.
I think that makes sense. And my question is then, like, how much power do they have as mortals,
Mm,
especially if we compare it to Downfall, which I don't think is an appropriate comparison.
yeah,
But like they were able to fully become gods again.
yeah. I don't think
I don't think they'll have
that
that
will
option.
be. Yeah, I don't think that'll be the case without some kind of matron's ascension. Um, Though, to your comment on power, I mean, this is potentially very dangerous I mean, some of these gods, I think it was Grumsh, I think. I don't remember which betrayer god said it, but as they were talking about being on Exandria, one of them was like, "Oh, then we can like go find all of our enemies and kill them,"
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I don't know.
I don't either. It's
Um,
definitely super interesting, though. It's a really cool kind of
oh man.
sandbox to have thrown the world into.
Oh, if I'm Matt, I'm like, yeah, I'm oozing creativity if I'm thinking about the potentials of a campaign 4, if it is on Exandria.
Yeah.
Um, I just as a random aside, I did see. I said I hadn't checked in with the Fireside, but I actually do remember I read that Matt mentioned there was an angle. Speaking of Consecution and the beacon, there was an angle of using a beacon to forever bind Predathos. But that, and he tried to
Interesting.
hint at it. He tried to hint at it, but the party never really grabbed that plot thread,
Hmm.
and so it was never pursued. But he said there was absolutely a pathway where they could have like bound Predathos with the beacon, because the Luxon was not uh, threatened by it in the same way, or not affected by it in the same way, or something to that effect.
Hmm.
Which also seems to confirm that the Luxon and Predathos, which we had a conversation of like how tightly wound are these two entities,
Yeah.
and could they even be the same entity in some form? It seems like that's not the case. Though I guess it potentially could still be. But
Interesting.
anyway,
Bound
so it's always,
like imprisoned?
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's always funny, like the directions that your party doesn't go. And Matt seems very hands off. I mean, there was also that question in the tailgate of like, have you ever fudged roles for the story? And he was like, nope. He's
Yeah.
like, honest to God, like we just whatever they want to do. Which, speaking of roles, dude, how about that Nat 20 from Laura Bailey?
That was crazy, man.
You know,
What a moment.
what of all the times to have a Nat 20?
Yeah. Which I'm glad, because I think it's cool that all the gods descended, but part of me is like, what would have been different if
I
some of
know.
them hadn't,
Yeah.
Um
I will say it did confirm for me that this really wasn't an IP slate wipe, I
mhm.
guess, in the sense of we didn't see a heavy fisted, like, no, the gods are leaving regardless. Like, we got to get away from Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the gods are still here. All of them. All of them are still here.
Yeah.
Now, will Matt continue to like distant creatively? For sure. I'm sure that's a possibility, but it is funny, these things that, because we talked about it on the show quite a bit. These things we give attention to, and then it doesn't happen. So,
Yeah, and especially considering that beacon option, where
mm-hmm.
if there was presumably an outcome that would have had Predathos infinitely imprisoned and the gods remained gods behind the divine gate. Seems like
Mm-hmm.
that was a feasible
Mm-hmm.
solution. So yeah, one we to briefly go back to the Vax thing. One thing I wanted to say that I thought was really nice is that the way campaign one ended was that bittersweet situation with Vax, but Matt said that occasionally a raven would visit Keyleth, and that was like representative of Vax, and like the literal last line of the campaign was, "And every day that raven would come to visit." And the literal last line of this campaign was like, and it wasn't every day, but like every so often her champion came to visit. So I thought that was an amazing way to tie everything together as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I liked it. I don't fault anybody for, I guess wishing that. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to phrase it any type of way, but
Wishing that Keyleth was eternally sad.
that's not what I meant. Because if they feel as if campaign one became inconsequential,
Mm.
I don't feel that way. But I could understand why somebody might.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens with these gods, and just
So,
like there's so many cool like possibilities just as like a world builder here, which regardless on if they explore it in campaign 4 or whatever, this like in future source books or stuff, because like what is the like the powers that be, especially in Vasselheim, I'm sure are going to want to keep up the traditions and the worship of their gods because they know they're coming back. But like the world as a whole is going to be like, it'll quickly become like legend more so than like reality. I feel
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, there used to be gods and some people believe they're reborn, but like, so I'm just wondering like where, like how the society is going to, in like 100 years, like what's it going to look like? Are they going to be like, most people don't believe in them anymore, or I don't know.
Yeah. You do have to wonder, like, yeah, how much religion will still be like a foundational, because Vasselheim's, I don't know if it's the biggest city, but the oldest city, with a heavy religious tie.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do wonder, like 500 years from now, like how are the temples perceived, and what does that look like? And it did sound like, I think magic still works though. I think Deanna did
Yeah.
like some cleric magic and it still worked.
Yeah.
Um, so they presumably still pull from those domains, but um, it's also a bit crazy to think about, like those domains still have, legions of angels and demons, for lack of a
Yeah.
better phrase,
Yeah.
who are just, we're just chilling,
So
we're
yeah,
just
like
hanging out here.
yeah, what's going on there? Like power vacuum, like in terms of at least the hells, like I'm sure that,
Isn't
you
that
know.
like a lore detail where Asmodeus is like, he rules the nine hells, but all the lieutenants and like captains of his army are always like vying to like one day supplant him. So
Yeah.
like, I think that's a lore foundational thing to Asmodeus. So it seems like, yeah, you're right. There would be some kind of power grab there.
I wonder if, and I mean, I know it takes place in the far past, but I wonder if we'll get any like kind of insights through Divergence of what
Mm,
might be going on with some of those things.
yeah. Yeah.
Which it's weird that like, I literally just finished the episode this morning for the last bit, so it's over, but it's weird that like there's Critical Role tonight. It's
Yeah.
not campaign 3, but it's still like kind of tied tangentially at least.
Yeah.
So I feel like it won't like truly hit me until maybe Divergence is over.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. I think around mid-March, it's going to really, yeah. Because there'll be a break, obviously. I don't know how long it'll be, but
Yeah. It was cool to, I'm just kind of jumping, but great to see all the guests. You kind of mentioned it.
yeah.
Which was fun because they did that for campaign 1 to some extent, but then they didn't because campaign 2 ended during the pandemic. So it's cool now that that's not the case anymore, that they did get to have fun and like bring people back for these moments. Um, and I can't remember if it was in the cooldown or if it was in the normal episode, but Emily Axford was also supposed to be there.
And so was Erika Ishii.
Oh, I missed
And
that
I
comment.
think, yeah, Erica couldn't reschedule, I think. And then I think Anjali Bhimani, I don't know if she was originally supposed to be there and then couldn't reschedule or just couldn't ever be there, but I know both of them wanted to be there too.
I really wonder how they would have put Erica's character in. Like if there would have been, because she was. I mean, obviously that the. Yeah, I don't know. Would she? Yeah, I'm just curious, like
I
how
think
that
it
would
would
have
have been
gone.
interesting. Well, in Fern's epilogue, when Ira comes and says, like, they're looking for you, I think there
Mm,
could have been an opportunity for Erika Ishii to come to the table
yeah,
briefly as you and be like, hey, I'm here as a just a heads up that we're not happy with what's happened.
that would have been fun.
Yeah. So I could have seen something like that. But
um, but yeah, okay. Well, so many places I want to jump to, but one thing that I just remembered that I do want to say is that I was big wrong, very very wrong in. I was like 9 hours. There's definitely a combat. We'll probably see lewdness again. That did not happen.
yeah.
So thinking back on prior discussions we had in terms of, for lack of a better word, disappointment in the final lewdness encounter, considering that was the final lewdness encounter, I was having these thoughts as the episode was wrapping up. And I was like, yeah, honestly, that was kind of a, for this character that had been built up so much. And And I think that's fair. But what I will say is then when we got that final scene of lewdness, I was all the way almost back on the other side being like, okay, actually, I really like what Matt has done with this.
Mhm.
I do think that the final fight with lewdness could have been a bit more interesting, but I do think it all tracks because like him in that moment was just trying to accomplish his goal of bringing down the barriers, getting the God Eater out, and ridding the gods. And the fact that he didn't like mustache twirl show up again, I think is because he succeeded. Like he
Yeah.
did what he wanted to do, and now he's resting on a grateful universe or whatever. So I
Mhm.
really liked ultimately how that ended up. But I will say that I totally understand people like wishing there had been a more climactic moment with him.
Yeah, it's this is a this is a hard conversation to have in the sense of I think people have a really hard time with nuance in like complex feelings in the sense of um this campaign ended very sweet for me. Like the epilogues and just like thinking about these characters over the years, it was very sweet. And that lewdness scry was like just perfect. I love this villain, by the way.
Yeah, that
Love this
yeah.
villain. I haven't seen C1 and C2, so I don't know how he lines up, so to speak. But yeah, loved this villain, and I loved that he got his Thanos-esque ending. And I wonder if we will see him tonight in Divergence.
Oh, that'd be cool.
You know, that'd be kind of nice.
That'd be
But
cool.
going back to my comment on just the complexity of it, separate from the second half, the first half, I was feeling pretty raw. Raw is not the right word. I was feeling very disappointed. I I love that this. The reason I say it's kind of hard to talk about because I don't want to take away from. It's very obvious how special this table is in terms of their friendships with one another, and it's special to be a part of it and to watch them play D&D from like a pure entertainment standpoint. I'm being entertained. I'm watching an IP create that I enjoy watching. I don't know if there could have been a worse ending to some of these details. And I guess that's a bold I guess that's a bold statement. I feel like the lewdness fight was a total flop. In that both times they fight him, he's busy doing something. Either trying to consume Liliana or trying to open the door to Predathos. And then I'm fairly certain that Bell's Hells are explicitly evil also in that they basically freed Predathos, and I don't really know the implications for Exandria, but now like the gods walk the earth, whereas previously they were behind the divine gate. So I don't know, man. There's definitely like a greater story narrative here where I'm like, I don't know about that. That seems I don't know. I don't know about that. But I know
Explicitly evil is a stretch. I mean, what were they supposed to do
I
in
mean,
terms
I
of
don't know.
Predathos?
I use the beacon that Matt
Well,
said they
but
should have thought
yeah,
of.
I mean,
So
okay, if they had had that option, then maybe, but like they didn't even know about that.
man, these guys are the baddies, man. Like they undid and here's the deal. Here's my other complaint about the finale. This is more of a first half complaint. I'm gonna say something bold, okay? And again, I don't want to
All right.
I don't take anything away from it. But
Speak your
the
truth.
the Disneyfication of the first half of all the gods are like, yeah, we're cool with it. Let's do it. It's amazing to me they wouldn't just like snap their fingers and like seal away Imogen. I mean, they did it with Ruidus. Why not just like bamf this person out from the get go? But then like everybody on Exandria is cool with it. They're just like literally the Vasselheim leaders are like, you've literally undone our society. And these are the people who remember they were hunting down the Grim Verity, like the
Yeah.
goblin guy we met in like a little hovel under the ground because he was afraid for his life, not from lewdness, but because of the Judicators in Vasselheim.
Right.
Like they hunted people down for this, and then Vasselheim's like, we get it, man, we got it. Yeah, you made a hard. I totally get it. Like the total lack of animosity and like it just kind of blew. It was very Disney for me, where I was like, this. It felt like there were no consequences to any decision, And you know what? Just to own my soapbox a little bit more, my man Taliesin was raked over the coals for this random line Matt had about the shard of, the tree that was smoking the smoking the pipe or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was a random comment of one person should not probably have 2 shards. It's innocuous comment in my mind. But Taliesin got raked over the coals for not reading this from Matt.
Let's not open that can of worms again.
And then Matt has this line that's, hey, whoever becomes a vessel of Predathos will be destroyed. That didn't happen. Imogen just, she burps him out. Like, we're good. Later, dude. He floats away. I'm just like, I gotta say, man, I was like, dude, where's the stakes? Where's the consequences? This is all too neat and tidy for me.
I'll grant you it on the vessel thing. I thought there would be a slightly something from that, and I feel like people are gonna get mad at me for saying this. I didn't want Ashton to die, but
oh yeah, that's another one. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But just because that would have been such a heroic and poignant moment, which again, it's not that I want Ashton to die. I'm glad that they were ultimately able to save him, but I also felt similarly in terms of consequences there. But what I'll say, and I hear you on the Vasselheim thing, but I don't think that's like there wasn't time, and I think that reaction will exist in like the permeations from the world,
Totally.
but like there wasn't space or time for it in that moment.
Totally. Yeah.
Both literally and figuratively. Because the matron, they're like, we don't have time to discuss this with you bozos. We got to go talk to the gods. And then the matron basically immediately shows up. Yeah. Like, I think there are consequences from that. Like, and I don't think they're cool with it. Yeah. But there wasn't space to explore that.
I think that's totally fair. I think that's totally fair. I think it's definitely as a DM even, it's like, man, we even have people here waiting in the wings to come in and have like their epilogue moments. So I get that. I definitely, and again, this is you guys listening, respect the nuance here, without getting too black and white about it. Definitely there was a moment of the finale night where I felt regret of like getting into this campaign of just like, dude, like really, there's no consequences at all. Now, again, people, it was a feeling I had.
Calm down.
Calm down. I'm separate from all that though. It was really special seeing these epilogue moments, saying goodbye to these characters. And, like I said, it's my very first campaign. And I think as time goes on, I'll have more feelings about it. But I am pretty far in on the Bells, Hells, or the Baddies arc in my mind, which I had a video that was on the cutting room floor early, like about halfway through the campaign about that for them. And I'm so glad I get to finish it now.
Yeah. So I'll be in the comment section arguing against you.
Yeah. It's like, why is this channel commenting on its own comments?
Listen, are they morally gray? 100%, but I wouldn't call them evil.
Here's what I'll say to that comment. You wouldn't call them evil. I would point to Robbie Damon's tweet and I've brought it up on the show before, but back in EXU, when his character's alignment was in question, he said, what is truly a good or evil character? And it's not like we've talked about mustache twirling. It's people who they're doing what makes sense to them. And for me, that definition of evil fits the bill for Bell's Hells. In, not evil in like, let's genocide everyone. I wouldn't put in the same category of Ludinous evil, but I would put him more towards evil than just like ambiguously gray on things.
I don't know. I mean,
and I'm glad you agree with me. So
yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. I guess, I feel like we could, this discussion we're having, I feel like you could have for anyone, like it's like somebody that maybe most people would say is unequivocally evil or something. Like you could be like, well, so I'm not trying to like do that for Bell's Hells, but I just think in their circumstances with what they had, like Fern is kind of the weird exception and Nanamori, like they're obviously You know,
I love that you said that.
'cause they're questionable, but and a few moments with Chet. But other than that, I feel like they were always just doing the best with what they had. Like they weren't ever trying to like screw anybody over. Like they were just they were thrust into this situation and trying to handle it the best they could.
I'd say the least evil of the group would probably be Orem or Ashton. And F.C.G. Though, he did murder a bunch of people at some point. But probably Orem and Ashton are probably the least evil in my mind. Or the most on this conversation, the most data points of like, good job.
Yeah.
Everyone else, though, I'm like, I don't know. I got a whole book to throw at each of you for things that you did that were questionable.
Wonder what you'd think about the Mighty Nine.
I haven't seen it.
They're also kind of questionable.
And here's the deal. A lot of this I'm just kind of saying half jokingly. So, I know with any fandom, people can get pretty in the weeds on details. So I would say like don't look too heavily into what I'm saying, everybody. I would love to know what you guys think though. But honestly, the most interesting characters are the more complicated ones that I'm not really looking for. What was the Chris Pine D&D movie where the paladin, I can't think of his name.
Oh yeah.
But he is like, the
The
bolstering
paragon of virtue.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for that, obviously.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And I do think not that these are the points you were bringing up, but and I think they even talked about this at random points in Critical Role, just like, you are like murdering things on the regular in a D&D campaign, like monsters, humans, like, so like, how do you reconcile that? And I think that like, outside of that specific murder example, I think there's just kind of like when running a D&D campaign and like this, fantasy, like there's just some of that kind of comes with it, and it's not that you hand wave it away, but it's just like this is the world they live in type of thing.
And there's a little bit of a chatter that I see happen for CR on this back and forth on it's a D&D game and like no, it's a professional production, like we should hold them to like an artistic standpoint. And again, like I feel like the older I get, the more comfortable I get with embracing nuance, in that I really don't have an issue with those with both being true, that it is like a professional form of entertainment, and it is also a D&D table. And onto that latter point, like if you guys haven't actually played D&D just gets very messy. And like I feel like Ashley Johnson they were razzing her in their recent episode because they were talking about like a rogue feat she had, and they were like her fellow party members, and they're like, yeah, you've only had it for like 10 levels, but it's cool. But that's when you're playing D&D, there's always someone at the table who's like, what do I oh man, what are my abilities? And you have analysis paralysis on what do we want to do. And then I had a NPC in my recent game. I introduced this NPC that I thought was fairly good, and one of my players wanted just to flat out kill him. And I was like, you want to kill him? He's like, yeah, I want to have my crossbow ready. So murder hobos are a thing. So I'll give a little credit to that.
So, I'm looking forward to that video. We'll see what evidence you all present.
Bro, I got extensive. But I need to decide if I want to re-record the first part, because the part that I've done is up through F.C.G. visiting and Yios visiting. I can't think of her name. His former
dancer.
Yeah. So I need to go back and think about if I want to redo anything. But I was thinking this morning about that video, and I was thinking I probably need to put a disclaimer at the start. That's just like, hey, this is really just out of like enjoyment of talking about the campaign and not meant to be like that serious. Only because I feel like as I've gotten older, I feel like fandom has gotten more toxic. Like I remember you put out that video on the Ashton Shard thing of just like, guys, let's take a breath a little bit. So anyway, I want to make a video like that, but I also don't want anyone being like, oh, the Pixels are so toxic. They hate Bell's Hells. And, I'm really just...
No, I think you should. And I think it's fine to kind of like preface it with that being like, this is not coming from a place of hatred. It's just coming from a place of thinking this is
Or
cool to analyze.
yeah, and not even really any deeper critique than just like, hey, this is kind of fun for me to think about.
Yeah.
So, but
100%.
anyway, um, so yeah, that was like a big meaty piece that we just got out of the way. Do you think we're gonna get a one shot with Ludinus in the future?
I could see it, but in service of what we were just talking about, I kind of hope not. Like
Me too.
if we do, I hope it's like Caleb just trying to, because I'm sure Caleb isn't, he doesn't have any appreciation for Ludinus's character arc. You know, he still wants to get rid of that loose end in terms of, you know, whatever. So I could see like maybe something happening like that, but if so, I wouldn't want it to be that like Ludinus has returned to
Mhm.
do something evil, you know, like
Mhm.
I really love his story, and that he truly did end up being just true to his mission of
Mhm.
wanting to rid the world of the gods, and he was successful
And I
mostly.
love, yeah, I love how Matt protected the integrity of his story in the sense of every time the party had a conversation with Ludinus, and he was basically like, "This is just, I don't care if I die. This is what I
Yeah,
want to do." They were like, "Oh yeah, sure. You know, you want to become a god."
yeah,
And now seeing that like Matt very much like stuck to his word and stuck to Ludinus's how that character was designed and um definitely throughout campaign 3 my favorite villain, and I almost want to see C1 and C2 just so I can stack it up, but I love the complexity of this character, and uh, you know, I love how it ended for him. So I agree with you. I hope we don't get a one-shot follow-up to kill him.
yeah.
Though I guess arguably, he is responsible for the lives of many people.
No,
But
yeah, for sure. So, you know, not saying that he doesn't. He's kind of similar to the, you know, Bell's hells are evil. Like, do the ends justify the means for lewdness? Probably
yeah,
not. But, um, yeah,
do you,
very
do you,
Thanos Osmandius esque in
yeah,
like had a plan and actually accomplished it, and now that he's
yeah.
done, he's chilling.
I
So,
love you mentioned that because I just watched that scene on YouTube yesterday.
yeah,
He's like, "We can't let you do that. Can't let me do it. I just triggered it 30 minutes ago." Which is
baller.
such a oh crap moment.
Also love that like, and he's so chill with it now that he's not even protecting himself from scrying anymore. Like,
Yeah,
I'm done.
yeah.
Cool. Shattered Teeth is a perfect. I was wondering like, okay, he didn't have scry protection on, like he must be confident or something, you know. But then like the Shattered Teeth just makes sense because like even if you know where he is, it's hard to find.
There was a theory that Ludinus was one of the children ferried out of Catha. Um,
Not
and
Katha.
uh, yeah, not Catha.
Uh, Aor,
Not
not
Aor.
Aor. Avalier.
Avalier, but what's the city? Um, the city that it's gonna land on.
Oh, Dominus.
Yeah, that he's, but
The
that city specific, I can't think of the name. But point being though, there was a theory, and I can't source it, guys, because it was such a random comment forever ago. But the reason I thought about that theory, because remember, Xerxes goes down and kind of helps the children escape from that city. The reason I think about
oh,
that,
that city.
yeah, yeah,
Terramunda
well,
or something?
Tora Toramunda.
Tormunda?
That was the mountain's name, though.
Yeah.
So
Anyways,
yeah,
continue.
yeah. Um, so anyway, there was a theory I read that he was one of those kids, and since he went then to the Shattered Teeth to retire, it would somewhat track in that he was from Dominus originally. But this is gonna bother me until I figure out the name of the city.
Well, Dominus and that city weren't the same place, though. Were
No, but
they?
Dominus. No, but Dominus is the shat. I'm not even saying it is that theory, but Dominus is the Shattered Teeth.
Yeah, I know that, but like
So
the Terran city that Xerxes went to wasn't Dominus.
it was a city in Dominus.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um, this is gonna drive me
I guess, yeah, I
crazy.
guess it was.
I'm on the CR wiki. Let's see here. Locations. Here, I'll just do Act of Crown.
Look up something.
This is such an obscure thing that I'm like kind of panicking trying to find it without wasting time.
Yeah.
So this is not a slight at the Critical Role Wiki, who they are always so good at having all this stuff. I'm just trying to find some random detail. Xerxes. How do you spell this guy's name?
Xerxes?
Yeah.
I think it's an X.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here we go.
I don't even know what to expect from tonight.
I know, man. I don't even know
Like
if
in
there's gonna
terms of
be
what the
any...
story is going to like be centered around.
Oh, and I don't even know if there's gonna be any Cathmoira. Cathmoira is the city.
There we go. Yeah, yeah.
That's why I was thinking Catha and then Moira in my
Yeah.
head. Cathmoira. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that long-winded arc of being, I wonder if he's from Cathmoira.
Yeah.
But could be just from Dominus in general, considering he's now retired at the Shattered Teeth.
Yeah, I think I don't remember when exactly it was, but I feel like there was some line when they were, because there are always these theories about like, was Ludinus on Avalier, but there was some line eventually that we heard that like that described him like seeing, like I felt like that placed him off Avalier, so he could have been on Cathmara or at least just somewhere. I don't remember,
Well,
but
the theory doesn't work actually, because we know from the Molesmere documents, he's from Isilra actually, or grew up in a town in Isilra.
right.
So it could have been originally from Dominus and then immigrated to
Right.
Isilra after the destruction of Dominus.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am very curious about tonight though, for sure.
Yeah, it'd be crazy if Matt was playing him.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just very happy to, we talked about this already, but very excited to see Matt play for Brennan now.
Yeah.
In Exandria. And Liam. Very excited to see both of them. I know that I think Alex Ward, I'm not familiar with him, but I know he was in Candela. And then I can't remember, I guess there's two other people that I can't remember who it is right now.
Yeah, let's see. Jasmine Dawn, Celia Rose Gooding.
Yeah, I don't think I'm familiar with either of them, but I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Works for Titmouse?
Oh.
I think. Is that right? And then Celia, I don't know what she's been involved with, but anyway. Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, in their Tony Award nominated role in Jagged Little Pill. That's cool. Cool. Okay. That was one of the funnest parts about Calamity, was like discovering Luis what's his last name?
Carrazzo?
Carrazzo, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We'll be talking more about Divergence, I'm sure. But to circle us back to C3, this was a random. I was looking at my notes. In terms of potential one shots, hopefully it's not a Ludinus thing. But we got the egg heist, which I think would be really fun for Fern trying to steal Caleb's egg. We got potential F.C.G. revival.
Yep.
And not that this would have to go with it, but also in that realm, the retrieval of F.C.G.'s coin in Drusar. That would be like a fun little one shot.
I'd love that. Yeah.
So maybe a one shot. I think Matt mentioned this as a possibility that deals with Ashton and the Bright Queen. Like when Ashton does go to the Kryn Dynasty to get investigated, that would be interesting. And I think I had another one. Where is it? Maybe one with Pike and the Everlight.
Mm.
Um,
I actually thought that might be a little plot thread for C4.
yeah.
I mean, not like that Pike will be the main, be like a. Though I think that'd be crazy if we brought. Well, you wouldn't bring Pike back. She's level 20. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But for a second, I was like, Ashley Johnson's gonna redo her role. It's like, wait a second. But I could definitely see that being an NPC or like a little plot thread or something. But yeah, I agree on all those one shots. And now it's interesting to go look at the descriptions of the one shots for the years to see. Like now, I think about that one in Australia
Mm-hmm.
where it's like they're taking on an old foe. I wonder, I wonder who that foe is,
Yeah.
because I think he said it was a combination of campaign 3. Let me actually look here. Let me find the event description. Here we go. Sydney and Melbourne. Party members from 2 separate campaigns. Oh, so not campaign 3, actually.
Mm.
But it could be Desheret. Is that right? The
Mm.
Mount of Asmodeus.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Or
still 3.
wait, what'd you say about Asmodeus?
The Mount of Asmodeus,
Oh,
the
the
Phoenix.
Mount.
Yeah.
I don't even think I knew that.
Yeah, it was Asmodeus's mount.
Mm.
So
It's just one of the. It's one of the 3. Like
yeah,
Ukatoa, it was one of those 3.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
which is another, speaking to Matt's creativity and like blank slate, there's also just the apogee solstice, all the things that were loosed,
Yeah.
things undone, that I think is just really good potential content too.
For sure. I mean, we touched on this earlier in terms of will C4 is happening, but will it be in Exandria? Um, I think if it is, I'm seeing like a huge time jump. And I
I could
think
see
that would
that.
be the more interesting choice, especially with like kind of the attitude and this is all my speculation here, but it feels like this was kind of the grand end to this 10-year 3 campaign saga. I don't really see campaign 4 picking up like in the immediate aftermath where we would see characters from the previous campaigns like integrate again. That felt like very specifically like kind of this fun moment in C3 because of this 10-year buildup. For
Yeah.
me, it feels like even if they remain in Exandria, they're kind of wanting a fresh start in a way.
Hmm.
So
I could
because
see that
of
for sure.
that, and also I think it'd be cool if we did super jump in the future to see like how does the world look now with this current god situation? How have the Ruidians integrated? That's another thing I wanted to bring up. Like,
Mm.
how's that actually going to work? Like, yeah, everyone says, yeah, we'll house some, but I feel like it's. I mean, maybe this is just my own real world cynicism coming in, but I feel like they're like not going to be treated well, and like they're going to be, oh, you guys are like the reasons the gods are gone. Like I
Yeah.
could see it being very like a lot of racism and
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
xenophobia. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, what that's going to look like.
I love that you said that too, because yeah, there's so much implication there that just couldn't get addressed, I think, in the finale. But in the one shot that we did, the Husk and Seed one, where like I think everyone had like gone away, but at the end they came back, and Alex in the one shot, one of the party members, they said they were like, "Oh, I was just kind of excited," and sorry for butchering this, but I was excited to think about how these governments are going to handle all these people returning. And my thought, I didn't say it, but my thought was, "Oh God, I'm not qualified to to conceptualize all of that." But similarly, I'm sure Matt is probably already thinking about those things.
Yeah.
So, um, I think it'll be cool in campaign 4 also, villains who are actually deities. And
Yeah.
then similarly, I think there's a really great sort of red herring set up there of like, oh, this person's evil. They're definitely Asmodeus. And it's like, no, they're just evil.
Yeah.
Like just a bad dude. I think that's just it's just interesting intrigue, I think. And then I've seen this chatter also in the Discord of could someone in C4 be playing a deity,
Mm.
which could be kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, that would be cool. Even
Matt
like,
is,
yeah.
or sorry,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I
I
was
was
just gonna
just
say like that could be true. Not that you not that you were saying this wouldn't be true, but that'd be fun. Even if it campaign 4 takes place 10,000 years later, that could still presumably be true if they're in an infinite cycle of of
Yeah.
Rebirth. So that would be cool.
What I was going to say was Matt has made a comment in the past on it'd be really fun to do like an industrial era of CR.
Yeah.
So to your point on like how far could this time jump be? I also wonder if we would see a campaign that has moved away from like typical fantasy to
Yeah.
more of like a steampunky, I don't know. I'm biased. I love high fantasy and probably always will. But I could definitely see some kind of time jump like that as well,
Yeah.
where there's trains and roads and
It'd be cool to like
cars
just,
some way, or
especially, if you've spent 10 years in that sandbox, to kind of change things around a little bit.
Mhm.
And then even if they did, that doesn't like, I feel like then that just, especially in terms of like putting out source books and stuff, you basically have as much like, that's like the perfect balance to be like, well, in your home campaign, like you can explore these 1,000 years that we're kind of
Mm,
glossing over, or it also opens up really cool one shots where like, we're going to go back to, this time. I don't know. This is again just all pure speculation, but in terms of like it being an interesting and still exciting creative, exercise for Matt, like I could see that opening up a bunch of like, not that he's tired of it, but like being like, okay, well now if we do this, like I can
mm.
do all these new fun things that I've wanted to try. I don't know.
Do you think if they jump forward too far that it makes it difficult to go back? Like, oh, we did our industrial campaign. Does it make sense to go backwards now and do a high fantasy campaign, or
Like that's just set in the past, you mean?
yeah, yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, barring any like literal planetary threats where like because this one Predatos like potentially could have wiped out everything, then I think you can always have compelling narratives even if like the world survives till 1,000 years from now. I think you do have to be careful with it, and so I don't think they would do anything too crazy where they're like boxing themselves in. But
I wonder if C4 we would get any kind of like homage to C1 of like a deity wanting to reascend
yeah.
back into godhood, with maybe now with the benefit of thousands of years of time, now with a plan to deal with Predathos, which I don't know if Predathos is eternal, if he does just starve and is gone, but certainly like Asmodeus is thinking about
Yeah,
how do I get back to godhood. So
for sure.
maybe this is the best situation because, like I said, they're not behind the divine gate anymore. They
Yeah.
can exert their influence directly now, but presumably I think they would want to get back to godhood. Um, so like, there could be an interesting plot thread there in C4 of we have to stop this character from reascending. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like at least Asmo and probably a lot of the other ones are going to be doing whatever they can to like usurp the others. So
Well,
wouldn't
Vecna's
surprise me.
probably not. Vecna's probably not happy about. He's like, I just got here. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? I just envision Vecna. Everyone's raising their hand to like, we all agree, and he's like, oh, jeez, yeah.
It's
Can't get
funny.
any
Like
more.
they all, like, it seemed like they all didn't really like him either. Like even the other betrayers seemed like he was kind of just shunned by everybody.
I think that makes sense. I mean, there was
Yeah.
already like the comments towards the matron
Yeah.
for similarly. So yeah. There's also the plot thread of there was Dune, the Chained
Yeah.
Oblivion. That could be an interesting plot thread too.
For sure. And we already knew this, but then like explicit hard confirmation from Matt that that is not a god. It's not like the rest of them, and
Mhm,
also that the Luxon isn't either.
mhm.
So it's kind of cool that there's still these other
Yeah.
entities. So yeah, I feel like there's basically open potential here to do whatever they want. But I'm excited to see.
How did it feel now all three campaigns getting the epilogues of all the characters, and
Yeah,
you haven't seen all of C1 and C2? Was that bittersweet?
yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it definitely it felt like the other ones. This one was different in that all of them showed up. But it felt pretty much the same in terms of that bittersweet. It doesn't. and maybe this is because it hasn't set in yet, but it doesn't feel any more final. Like the way I felt at the end of C1 and C2, this doesn't feel like, oh, now it's truly over, which
Mm.
maybe I should feel that way, but it's just kind of the same. Like, I feel like, maybe we'll still see them. And I mean, we know we're seeing the Mighty Nine again
Mm.
so like, it's not different in that way, but maybe it should be. But to
Mhm.
me, it just felt similar, bittersweet like the rest of them.
Mhm. Yeah, I get that. It definitely felt final to me. I guess it being my first one, especially as the language that Matt was using of like asking them like, what happens to your character like over the next several years and like 15 years.
Yeah.
I was like, oh gosh. And then Talison's description of Ashton, like going back and forth to the moon, and then
Yeah.
one day he just doesn't come back, which was so poignant and poetic. Ashton's another favorite of mine.
Yeah.
That just hit really hard. Of just like, oh man, like finality of it all. But anyway,
No, yeah. Right there with you. But those same questions were asked at C1 and C2. And just to say that it doesn't mean that
yeah,
them being asked here that we won't check in with them again. But um yeah, I don't know, man. Because I guess it really just depends on where are they going from here in terms of the meta, the grand scale for
mm-hmm.
C4.
Yeah. Just looking at these live shows to see if I can glean anything else, but I don't think so. I mentioned a bunch of my people from my campaign are going to the Chicago show.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
But yeah. Well, is there anything else, man? I think we hit it all.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with it. And then maybe we will revisit some stuff at the wrap up or something. 'Cause I'm sure there's all like I feel like we've almost talking for 2 hours, but I feel like we talked a lot of grand scheme. So there might be like smaller details I think of, but we can always revisit.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, friends, it's our last episode of C3. Thanks for watching and listening.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being on this journey with us. We've said that like 3 times, but yeah, it's crazy. Again, doesn't feel real that we're here at the end.
Yeah. Well, again, if you've been with us this far and you still haven't joined the Discord, what the heck are you waiting on?
Get in there, because we will be there tonight.
Yeah.
Divergence.
And live stream tomorrow. And pretty much it. So we love you all. Thanks for tuning in and being part of this.
Yeah.
You just keep saying that.
Thank you guys for being on this journey with us. But no, yeah, we'll see you guys tonight for those of you that are going to be in the Discord with us, and then we'll see you tomorrow. But as always, y'all, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
I just keep killing the joke. Like, thanks for being on the journey with us. Like, okay, they get it. Put it on your bingo card. So, okay.
All right. Well, for real now. Bye, guys.